Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Starmer in the Oval Office. It's a very special place, and he's a special man. And the United Kingdom is a wonderful. This is a wonderful country that I know very well. I'm there a lot, and I'll be going there, and we expect to see each other in the near future. We'll be announcing it, but. We're going to be discussing many things today. We'll be discussing Russia, Ukraine. We'll be discussing trade and lots of other items. So I look forward to it. And Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I say thank you for your hospitality, for your leadership. We have met a number of times, we've talked a number of times, and we have had a very constructive conversation. I'm sure we will today. So this is a letter from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. So this is a very special letter. I think the last state visit was a tremendous success.
It was.
His Majesty the King wants to make this even better than that. So this is truly historic, an unprecedented second state visit. He wants to talk that through with you.
And that says at Windsor. That's yes. Really something.
Yes. What I haven't got yet is your answer. I do need to.
The answer is yes. On behalf of our wonderful First Lady, Melania, and myself, the answer is yes. Thank you. I'm going to keep that one.
You're going to keep that one.
President Trump, Andrew and Tristan Tate landed in Florida today on a private jet after being released from custody in Romania. They are accused rapists, human traffickers, not thought of as good people in many circles. Did your administration pressure the Romanian government to release them, and if so,
I
why?
know nothing about that. I don't know. You're saying he's on a plane right now?
He's back. They already.
Yeah, I just know nothing about it. We'll check it out. We'll let you know. Okay, please.
Mr. President, could you be persuaded, as part of a peace settlement in Ukraine, to provide air cover, a backstop security position to the contributions that Europe might make as well?
Well, so President Zelensky is coming to see me on Friday morning, and we're going to be signing really a very important agreement for both sides, because it's really going to get us into that country. We'll be working there. We'll have a lot of people working there. And so in that sense, it's very good. It's a backstop, you could say. I don't think anybody's going to play around if we're there with a lot of workers and having to do with rare earths and other things, which we need for our country. And we appreciate it very much. And I look forward to seeing him. We'll be talking about it, and we'll also be talking about that today with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we've already indicated that we'll play our full part in making sure that any deal, if there is one, and I hope there is, and I think this is a historic moment to make sure it's a lasting deal, and we're about to have a discussion about how we can make that work.
But I have to say this, as I said yesterday, you know, you're talking about a peacekeeping force. We have to make a deal first. Right now, we don't have a deal. We have Russia, we have Ukraine. I think we're very well advanced. I think Russia has been acting very well. We have Representatives Steve Witkoff and Scott and Marco and JD. We're all involved, every one of us, and a lot more. But I think we're very well advanced on a deal, but we have not made a deal yet. So I don't like to talk about peacekeeping until we have a deal. I like to get things done. I don't want to give it the bad luck sign. We don't want to do that. But we've had very good talks with Russia. We've had very good talks, as you know, with Ukraine. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, you obviously can do business with our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. You said yesterday that the EU was constructed to screw the US when it comes to trade. What can our Prime Minister say to you to persuade you not to impose tariffs on the United Kingdom?
Yeah, did I use the word that you said, that bad word?
I think so. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think that the EU, yeah, I've had problems with the EU because, and we're not talking about, we happen to have a great relationship with you, but we did have, and we do have problems with the EU because they've tariffed us. They do it in the form of a VAT tax, which is about 20%, and many other taxes. They sue our companies. They sued Apple got 16 or 17 billion dollars, which was, I think, totally a ridiculous decision. And they're suing Google for a lot of money. They're suing a lot of other companies, and we don't like the way they're treating our people now. We don't like the way they're treating our companies. They sell us cars. We don't sell them cars. They don't take our cars. They don't take much of our agriculture. And we have a deficit with them of about $350 billion. So I wouldn't say it's been such a great relationship personally, but other people did because it's politically correct to say that it's been good, but it hasn't been good. And we're going to change that. And we are going to have reciprocal tariffs. We're not going to have tariffs. We're going to have reciprocal. Whatever they charge us, we're going to charge them, which for many years, foolishly, I would have done that, but then all of a sudden we had COVID and we had other things to think about. So it took me a little while to get that on, but we had, in my first 4 years, we had the greatest economy in the history of, I think, the world, but certainly in the history of our country. I think we're going to have that again, but the EU was very, very tough on us. And then if you look at the war, we're in for $300 billion plus, and they're in for $100 billion. They get their money back, and now we'll get our money back also. But under Biden, you wouldn't have done that. Biden did a terrible job, I have to say. I hate to say that about somebody that sat here just before me, but he did a terrible, terrible job. That war should have never happened, the war between Russia and Ukraine. Frankly, October 7th should have never happened. Israel, that should have never happened. What happened there should have never. Inflation should have never happened. Afghanistan should have never happened. The way they got out, not getting out, but the way they got out.
Mr. President, I just wanted to ask, Mr. Starmer, the Prime Minister has said that he believes that Vladimir Putin would be at risk of invading Ukraine again without a sufficient backstop. Do you think that Vladimir Putin would be likely to invade again in the event of a peace deal?
I don't think so. I think when we have a deal, it's going to be the deal. Thousands of people are being killed a week. Soldiers, mostly, because the towns have been destroyed. But thousands of soldiers. This was a very bad week, by the way. I get the stats.
Several numbers.
And you're talking about a human life. Number one, I want to see that. And it doesn't involve American soldiers, but it's Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. And I think I'm speaking for both.
Yeah.
Number one, we want to see that stop. And number two, I want to stop paying the kind of money that we're talking about. You know, we're helping, and we're helping NATO, but we're helping a lot, more than anybody else by far, and I want that to stop also.
Mr. President, the European...
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You talked about trade tariffs this morning on your social media site. Just a question about China. 10% tariffs has already been implemented on China. Are you planning to do an
additional 10 above the 10?
This will be an additional 10 above. And is there, from the talks with Canada and Mexico so far, are you not seeing the progress that you wanted in order to...
I don't see it at all. No, not on drugs. We've done a great job. If you look at Tom Homan, he's been incredible, and Christie, they've done a great job in terms of the border. But the drugs continue to pour into our country, killing hundreds of thousands of people. We're losing substantially more than 100,000 people. I mean, dead. They're dead. The families are destroyed after that happens. So it's, you know, it's not just that. That's the ultimate. But the families are absolutely destroyed. The drugs come in through Mexico. They come, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them come from China. And that's why we did that. It's 10 plus 10. In case, was there confusion on that?
There was, sir, yeah.
Okay, 10 plus 10. It's a second 10. And I think you're going to see, eventually you're going to see drugs stopping, because the country should not be allowing those drugs to come into the United States of America, and we're not going to allow it to happen. So that goes on the 4th of March. And then on the 2nd of April, we have reciprocal tariffs. That's reciprocal, where we charge countries what they're charging us, and nobody should have a problem with that. We have reciprocal, it's reciprocity. It's something that I think everybody I've spoken to said that's fair, and it is. If somebody charges us 25%, we charge them 25. If somebody charges us 10 or 15 or 30 or 70, we charge them an exact like amount. And it's pretty simple, but it's reciprocal tariffs, because the United States has been taken advantage of by many, many different countries, including our friends, friend and foe. And in many cases, our friends took bigger advantage of. And when you talk about the EU, we're talking about the EU. The EU has been really very bad to us in terms of trade. And I'm a different kind of a president. I can't let that happen. Thank you. Yeah, please, ma'am, go ahead.
Mr. President, what would you be willing to do if Vladimir Putin did not stick to the terms of any deal on Ukraine?
If he not what?
He did not stick to the terms of any deal on Ukraine, because he has a history of not sticking to his word when it comes to international agreements.
I think he'll keep his word. I think I've spoken to him. I've known him for a long time now. You know, I've known him. We had to go through the Russian hoax together. That was not a good thing. It's not fair. That was a rigged deal and had nothing to do with Russia. It was a rigged deal with inside the country, and they had to put up with that too. They put up with a lot. It wasn't just us. They had to put up with it, with a phony story that was made up. I've known him for a long time now, and I think he will. I don't believe he's going to violate his word. I don't think he'll be back. When we make a deal, I think the deal's going to hold. Now, they're going to have security. You're going to have security. Yep. You're going to have soldiers. I know France wants to be there. He's the president has said he wants to have soldiers there. I don't think we're going to even be necessary, but I don't think there'll be any problem with keeping the deal with the security.
Mr. President, fentanyl, Mr. President, less than 1% of all fentanyl that comes into the U.S. is apprehended at the Canadian border. So why use fentanyl as a reason?
Because they should be apprehending much more. They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more because a lot comes through Canada. And as Mexico gets stronger in terms of the border, it goes up to Canada. And a lot of drugs are coming in through Canada. We can't have that.
Mr. President,
yeah, go ahead, please, in the back.
Is there anything you can say tomorrow to President Zelensky to reassure him that his country's war hasn't been in vain and its sovereignty is not going to be threatened by any deal with Russia?
Well, you know, he's coming. Perhaps he's already on his way. And we're going to be signing the deal together, probably in front of the media. And we're going to be having a good conversation. No, we want to work with him, President Zelensky, she said before. We want to work with him, and we will work with him. I think the president and I actually have had a very good relationship. It maybe got a little bit testy because we wanted to have a little bit of what the European nations had. You know, they get their money back by giving money. We don't get the money back. Biden made a deal. He put in $350 billion. And I thought it was a very unfair situation.
We're not getting all of ours. I mean, quite a bit of ours was gifted. It was given. There were some loans, but mainly it was gifted, actually.
Mr. President, the Europeans want Ukraine to be part of NATO as part of this deal. Are you willing to budge on that at all, or is it a firm?
Well, I could be very nice and say, oh, well, we'll work to it. Look, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's what started this whole thing. Biden said that, and all of a sudden the gun started. That was one of the primary reasons it started. And this was long before President Putin. They never said it was an impossibility. So we can say, oh, gee, well, we'll try. But that's something that's just not going to happen. And then the other question I ask is about the land. Will you get your land back? Well, they've fought long and hard on the land, and you and I will be discussing that. And we're going to certainly try and get as much as we can back. But on the NATO, it's just not, that's not going to happen. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you talked about having common ground with Keir Starmer, but there are things you disagree on as well. You described Zelensky as a dictator. He describes President Putin as a dictator. Do you see that as a problem?
The relationship between President Zelensky and President Putin is not a good one. You've noticed, right? It's not a good one. It's not a good relationship. And we're going to have to try and work something out. Sometimes that happens. I get along with both. I have a very good relationship with President Putin. I think I have a very good relationship with President Zelensky. And now we're doing the deal, and we're going to be in there. We're going to be actually in there and digging our hearts out. And hopefully, we need the rare earth, and we have some here, but we don't have enough. Our economy is very strong, and we need a lot of things that, in some cases, we don't have here. So I think we're going to have a very good relationship, but the relationship between them is not the best.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Yes,
In his remarks at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK, particularly. Could you respond? What is your message?
I have an idea. We have the man right here. Come on. Let's go, JD. We're putting you on stage.
Great. Yeah, look, I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, but we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We're heading out.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
He's answered 1,009
Thanks,
questions.
guys.
The first 30 days. Number 2 was Obama, 180. Yeah. The first 30 days.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Today it's my privilege to welcome the Prime Minister of a very special place, the United Kingdom, to the White House. Prime Minister Starmer, you've been terrific in our discussions. You're a very tough negotiator, however. I'm not sure I like that, but that's okay. Very, very special person. The Prime Minister and I have gotten off to an outstanding start. The U.S. and U.K. have a special relationship, very special, really like no other, passed down through the centuries, and we're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep it very strong as it is. I'm pleased to say that the bust of one of the Prime Minister's greatest predecessors, Winston Churchill, is now back in the rightful place in the Oval Office, and we're very proud of it. Our meeting today and the various breakout sessions we had were tremendously productive. Most importantly, I provided the Prime Minister with an update on our efforts to end the bloody and horrible war in Ukraine with Russia, which would never have happened if I were president. That was not going to happen. I promise you that. After 3 years of hellacious conflict, approximately 1 million Ukrainians and Russians have been senselessly killed, but the number, I believe, is much higher than that. Countless schools, hospitals, towns, and beautiful ancient churches have been absolutely obliterated. To begin the process of ending this spiral of death, I had historic back-to-back calls with President Putin, very successful calls, I might add, and President Zelensky, and my team also spoke with the Secretary General of NATO on numerous occasions, and we're working very hard to get that war brought to an end. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think it's moving along pretty rapidly. And I want to thank all of the people that are here that have been working on it. And we'll let you know what happens. It'll either be fairly soon or it won't be at all. In addition, this week I met with President Macron of France, as you know, and held talks with members of the G7. Tomorrow, the progress toward peace will continue when President Zelensky visits the White House. He'll be here tomorrow in the early part of the day, and we'll be signing a historic agreement that will make the United States a major partner in developing Ukraine's minerals and rare earths and oil and gases, and we have a great understanding. I think it's going to be great for Ukraine. We're going to be at the site, and we'll be digging. We'll be digging. Dig we must. But much of the European aid to Ukraine has been sent in the form of loans for which they expect to be paid back, and we didn't have that honor under the Biden administration. He sent money, or just sent it, money after money after money, and never had any knowledge of ever seeing it back. Maybe $300 to $350 billion, but under the breakthrough agreement, very unusual, which everyone said was difficult to get, but it's really very good for Ukraine and very good for us. The American taxpayers will now effectively be reimbursed for the money and hundreds of billions of dollars poured into helping Ukraine defend itself, which by and of itself is a very worthy thing to do. We've paid far more than any other country, and with most of our support, it's been paid in military, the finest weapons anywhere in the world. This includes vast amounts of military hardware, ammunition, and various other things that we now have to start rebuilding our own stockpiles. Additionally, the minerals agreement will provide the basis for a more sustainable future relationship between the United States and Ukraine, and thus stimulate the long-term prosperity that will help the Ukrainians rebuild their country. It's been demolished. And the ruined infrastructure. The infrastructure, as you know, is in very bad shape. In just over 1 month, our administration has already achieved more progress toward peace than years in the other administration where they did nothing toward peace. They didn't understand what was happening. Our approach is basically common sense. As I said, so many of the things that we do are based on common sense. If you want peace, you have to talk, both sides. As I discussed with Prime Minister Starmer, the next step we're making is toward a very achievable ceasefire. We hope that that can happen quickly because thousands of young people, in this case, we're not talking about Americans, we're talking about Ukrainians and Russians are being killed every week, thousands. And it's a rough battlefield. It's a flat piece of land, and the bullet only stops when it hits somebody. And this week, I saw the reports, and it's I don't even want to say what they are, but thousands of people, young, vibrant people died. And we want to stop that. Senseless. Should have never happened. This will lay the groundwork for a long-term peace agreement that will return stability to Eastern Europe and hopefully ensure that such a terrible war will never happen on European soil or, for that matter, anywhere again. It's a horrible thing that's going on. The disaster in Ukraine shows exactly why it's so important for the United Kingdom and other NATO partners to make large investments in their defense capabilities. In many cases, 4% or 5% of GDP would be appropriate. I know that they're raising it. I just read an article, a great article, about the work you're doing in the UK as to the military. You're raising it quite a bit, which is a great thing to do for your country. It's a great thing to do. It's sad that we need that, but probably need that. So congratulations on that. I know you got it through. After years of chronic underfunding, there's an urgent need to catch up for some countries. And I want to thank the Prime Minister once again for traveling here today. Working together, I believe that we'll once again demonstrate the power of our country's unique friendship. This is indeed a unique friendship, but we're going to make some great trade agreements with the UK and with the Prime Minister, and it'll happen very quickly. So I just want to thank you again, and please thank King Charles for the invite, and I look forward to you giving our acceptance on behalf of the United States of America. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your leadership. This has been a very good and very productive visit. And with your family roots in Scotland and your close bond with His Majesty the King, it's good to know that the United Kingdom has a true friend in the Oval Office. And it was so good to see the bust of Winston Churchill back in its rightful place just a moment ago. But look, in a moment of real danger around the world, this relationship matters more than ever. We remain each other's first partner in defence, ready to come to the other's aid, to counter threats wherever and whenever they may arise. No two militaries are more intertwined than ours. No two countries have done more together to keep people safe. And in a few weeks, we mark VE Day, the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe. Britain and America fought side by side to make that happen. One of the greatest moments in our history. We stand side by side still today, And we're focused now on bringing an enduring end to the barbaric war in Ukraine. Mr. President, I welcome your deep and personal commitment to bring peace and to stop the killing. You've created a moment of tremendous opportunity to reach a historic peace deal, a deal that I think would be celebrated in Ukraine and around the world. That is the prize. But we have to get it right. There's a famous slogan in the United Kingdom from after the Second World War. That is that we have to win the peace. And that's what we must do now. Because it can't be peace that rewards the aggressor or that gives encouragement to regimes like Iran. We agree history must be on the side of the peacemaker, not the invader. So the stakes, they couldn't be higher. And we're determined to work together to deliver a good deal. We've discussed a plan today to reach a peace that is tough and fair, that Ukraine will help shape, that's backed by strength, to stop Putin coming back for more. Now, I'm working closely with other European leaders on this, and I'm clear that the UK is ready to put boots on the ground and planes in the air to support a deal, working together with our allies, because that is the only way that peace will last. Mr. President, in this new era, you're also right that Europe must step up. This year we'll be giving more military aid to Ukraine than ever, and just this week I've set out how we're shouldering more of the security burden. We're already one of the biggest spenders in NATO, and now we're going much further, delivering Britain's biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. And Mr. President, it's no secret we're from different political traditions, but there's a lot that we have in common. We believe it's not taking part that counts. What counts is winning. If you don't win, you don't deliver. And we're determined to deliver for the working people of Britain and America, who want and deserve to see their lives improve. So we're both in a hurry to get things done. And that's what the UK and US do when we work together. We win and we get things done. So we'll do what it takes to keep our people safe. We'll also work together to deliver some big economic wins that can benefit us both. We have a $1.5 trillion invested in each other's economies, creating over 2.5 million jobs across both economies. Finally, to underline the importance of this bond. It was my privilege and honour to bring a letter with me today from His Majesty the King, not only sending his best wishes, but also inviting the President and the First Lady to make a state visit to the United Kingdom, an unprecedented second state visit. This has never happened before. It's so incredible, it will be historic. And I'm delighted that I can go back to His Majesty the King and tell him that President Trump has accepted the invitation. So thank you. Our teams will now work together to set a date, and we look forward to welcome you in the United Kingdom. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful accent.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Americans who are concerned about higher prices believe, as most people do, that they're paid by consumers and importers when they import things into this country. Can you explain how you came to this belief that foreign governments are paying tariffs? And for the Prime Minister, did you discuss with President Trump his repeated statements of desire to annex Canada? And has the King expressed any concern over the President's apparent desire to remove one of his realms from his control?
So I'll go ahead. The first part, the tariffs are necessary because we've been treated very unfairly by many, many countries, including our friends, friend and foe. But we've been treated very unfairly in trade at levels that nobody's really ever seen before, and especially under the Biden administration, they really took advantage of the United States. I put massive tariffs on China during my 4 years. We had the best economy in the history of our country. Probably the best economy, maybe the best economy in the history of the world. And I used tariffs to even things up. And in particular with China, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars and we had no inflation. And it's a myth. It's a myth that's put out there by foreign countries that really don't like paying tariffs, and especially to even up. So we've been treated badly by a lot. We're using tariffs. And I find, and you just have to look at the numbers, but I find that it's not about inflation. It's about fairness. And the inflation for us has not existed. And I don't think it's going to exist. We're going to bring our car industry back. We're going to bring our chips back. We're going to bring so many things back to our country, including pharmaceuticals and drugs. And the thing that's going to get us there is tariffs. And I say often it's my favorite word in the dictionary, but I always preface that by saying now, because I got into a lot of trouble with the fake news where they say that's not good. So I say God, love, family, wife, they're all my favorite words, but tariff is about number 4 or 5 on the list. But I will tell you, it's going to make our country rich, and it's going to stop us from being a laughing stock all over the world, because we have been taken advantage of like no country has ever been taken advantage of. Thank you very much. And
look, we had a really good discussion, a productive discussion, a good discussion, as a result of which our teams are now going to be working together on an economic deal. Our teams are going to be working together on security in Ukraine. You mentioned Canada. I think you're trying to find a divide between us that doesn't exist. We're the closest of nations, and we had very good discussions today, but we didn't discuss Canada.
Thank you. Please. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Natasha Clark from RBC. Mr. President, you've said you're working on a new trade deal with Britain, which we, of course, welcome. President Obama once said Britain was at the back of the queue for that trade deal. Where are we now? When do you think we're going to see that? And Prime Minister, the BBC has today admitted serious flaws over the recent Gaza coverage, suggestions of payments made to people linked to Hamas. Does the BBC still have your trust? Thank you.
Well, they didn't do well with President Obama. He'd never got a lot of things done, and he didn't get a trade deal done that was of any importance or magnitude. We've had great discussions on trade, and I think we're going to have a deal done rather quickly as it can be done. We're going to have something, I think, rather quickly. We expect to do that. Okay? Please.
On the BBC, look, I've been concerned about the programme in question. The Secretary of State had a meeting with the BBC. I think it was yesterday, it could have been the day before. Thank you.
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Pardon me. Mr. President, do you support Article 5 of the NATO treaty? And are you concerned that it might be triggered if European peacekeeping forces end up in Ukraine?
I support it. I don't think we're going to have any reason for it. I think we're going to have a very successful peace, and I think it's going to be a long-lasting peace. And I think it's going to happen hopefully quickly. If it doesn't happen quickly, it may not happen at all. And we want it for 2 reasons. Number one, I want to see on a humane basis, I want to see soldiers stop getting shot, because largely it's soldiers now. Towns have been obliterated, but it's largely that. And I don't want to pay billions and billions and billions of dollars, nor does the Prime Minister or anybody else, on a senseless war that should have never happened. And we're going to get it taken care of. But I think it's going to be a peace that's going to be long-lasting. Do you have a question for the Prime Minister?
Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, you were asking the President today about a backstop for Europe if the peacekeeping force ends up in Ukraine. Did you feel like you got a satisfying answer for yourself and for Europe? And Mr. President, if you want to comment on that as well, please do.
I felt we had a very productive discussion. Obviously, as the President says, the deal has to come first. But yes, our teams are going to be talking about how we make sure that deal sticks, is lasting and enforced. So our teams will be talking about that.
Okay. Please, Blue.
Mr. President, some experts think it could take more than a decade to mine the precious minerals from Ukraine. How much should the U.S. expect to receive, and when do you expect to see that come to fruition?
Well, we're never going to know that answer, but by our being in Ukraine and doing the exploration and also the digging and taking the rare earth, which we need in our country very badly. We'll be doing a substantial amount of work, probably about at least what we have in there, and we hope to be able to do that. You never know when it comes to that. You know, you dig and maybe things aren't there like you think they're there, but we'll be spending a lot of time there. It'll be great for Ukraine. It's like a huge economic development project, so it'll be good for both countries, okay? Please.
Prime Minister, excuse me, Prime Minister, you've talked about putting British soldiers' boots on the ground in Ukraine in the event that President Trump succeeds with his peace deal. But can you do that without a firm assurance that America will have our back in the form of some kind of security guarantee were Putin to breach that agreement? And Mr. President, tomorrow you're seeing President Zelensky to sign this deal on minerals and energy that could be hugely important to the United States. Will you take the opportunity to apologize to him for calling him a dictator while praising Vladimir Putin, who is a dictator?
Well, Robert, let me start by saying I've been really clear today and previously that I think that European countries, including the United Kingdom, need to step up in our own defence and security. We've been doing that in recent days. You saw the announcement we made on spending just the other day. In addition to that, I've made it clear that the United Kingdom will play its full part in ensuring that if there's a deal, and that we hope there is a deal in Ukraine, that is a lasting deal that sticks. And we're obviously working with other European countries on that, France and NATO in particular. But I think I'm hosting 18 countries on Sunday to further our discussions. You heard from the President this morning that, you know, as historically has always been the case, we have each other's backs. And today we've been talking about the deal, how that will be a lasting deal. And coming out of this, our teams will now be talking in detail about that.
And I think we're going to have a very good meeting tomorrow, 11 o'clock. And I think we're going to have a very good meeting tomorrow morning. We're going to get along really well, okay? We have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for them. We've given them a lot of equipment and a lot of money, but they have fought very bravely, no matter how you figure it. They have really fought. Somebody has to use that equipment, and they have been very brave in that sense. Yeah, please, go ahead.
The ceasefire deal is nearing an end this Saturday, and there's been some worry that phase 2 might never get there. Do you believe that phase 2 of the ceasefire in Gaza will come to fruition? And have you spoken to Netanyahu about it?
So we're working very hard in the Middle East and Gaza and all of the problems, and it's been going on for years and years and centuries and centuries. It's a tough neighborhood, but it could be a very beautiful neighborhood, and I think we're going to come up with some pretty good solutions. But phase 1 is almost complete. We've had some people that have been very seriously injured, very seriously hurt, both physically and mentally. They've come out of there very, very, and some of them in very, very bad shape. It's shocking. Many young people aren't in bad shape. Young people are strong, healthy. They don't die. People have come out dead, young people and old people. It's a rough situation, but I think we're going to make it much better. And I think that we've had a huge impact on that since we've been in just the 4 weeks. I think we've had a huge impact on Gaza, the Middle East, and we have some pretty good talks going on concerning lots of other people that are going to make it better. So we'll see what happens. Nobody really knows, but we'll see what happens. But I think we've had a very positive impact. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. A question on Ukraine. Number one is, if you're not considering the security guarantees, are you open to other forms of, for example, intelligence cooperation with Ukraine? And Mr. Prime Minister, President Trump has proposed a plan for Gaza. Does this fit into the two-state solution that the UK held for a long time? Do you see it fit into your general Middle Eastern strategy? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're open to many things, but before I even think about that, that's almost pleasant to think about because that would mean that peace has been arrived at. We have to arrive at that peace. And, you know, you went 3.5 years with an administration that never even really had a meeting. They didn't have a meeting on peace. And there was no prospect of peace. I think, frankly, Russia wanted to go through the whole long deal. I don't think they do anymore. I don't think they do. We had a very big impact on that whole situation. But I don't like talking about phase 2 until I get phase 1. Phase 1 is I have to make peace. And we have to get Russia to agree. We have to get Ukraine to agree. And I think we will, I think we've come a long way. I believe we're going to get it done. I wouldn't say that if I didn't think so. And I think it will be very important, very historic, and we're going to save a lot of lives.
On the question of Gaza, the last few weeks of the ceasefire have been very impactful. And for me, there are 2 images that I remember more than any other. The first is Emily Damari, who is British, being reunited with her mother. You may remember she had her fingers missing after what she endured. That was an incredible moment. I'd spent a lot of time with her mother whilst she was held captive, and her mother went through absolute torture. The other image was thousands of Palestinians marching through rubble, trying to return to their communities and their homes. So we have to do everything we can to ensure that the ceasefire continues, so that more hostages can be returned, so that aid can be brought in that's desperately needed. We need to allow Palestinians to return and to rebuild their lives, and we must all support them in doing that. And yes, I believe that the 2-state solution is ultimately the only way for a lasting peace in the region.
And think of that. She came home with her fingers and part of her hand blown off.
That's terrible.
How bad does it get? And we had others that came home in much worse shape than that.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation. Please, yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, did our Prime Minister persuade you not to put tariffs on the UK? And if I may, Prime Minister, do you think that Vladimir Putin is a man who will keep his word? Thanks.
He tried. He was working hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. But he tried. I think there's a very good chance that in the case of these 2 great friendly countries, I think we could very well end up with a real trade deal where the tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see, but he earned whatever they pay him. He earned today. He was working hard at lunch, and I'm very receptive to it. I think we, in all fairness, in all seriousness, I think we have a very good chance at arriving at a very good deal. JD and Scott and Howard, all the people are working on it. Okay, thank you.
On the second part of the question, I think my views on Putin are pretty well rehearsed and pretty well known. My concern is that if there's a deal, and I hope there is a deal, that it must be a lasting deal, that it's not a temporary measure. And that is why I think it's really important that Putin knows that this deal, a historic deal, which I very much hope comes about, is there, and it's a lasting deal, and that we're able to deal with any inclination he has to go again or go further.
I think we'll have 2 deals. I think we'll have a deal on ending the war, and I think we're going to end up with a great trade deal with you. And it's an honor to be with you, and I want to thank everybody very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.